Hello, it's Giuseppe Vafanculo from the District of Criminals. We're about to play the October 12th, 2020 edition of Need to Know, the Fetzer Report. I'm joined by my fellow commentator, David Scorpio. How are you doing today, Dave? And what did you think of recording this episode with the great Jim Fetzer?
Doing good, man. Awesome. Good day.
Yeah, he was really on fire today, as the viewers will soon see. I mean, he put together a heck of a news show, and lots of crazy things going on these days. That's for sure.
Well, Dr. Fetzer kicked ass in the morning on Need to Know News, and then he kicked ass again on his Revolution radio show this afternoon. And what, 80 years old? Not bad.
I know, 80 in December. That's crazy. So, all right. Well, why don't we roll the show? People don't want to listen to us; they want to listen to him. And then when it's over, we'll do some closing remarks, including talking about the fundraiser to raise some funds for his legal defense fund. But first things first, let's go to the new episode of Need to Know, the Fetzer Report.
All right.
This is Jim Fetzer in Madison, Wisconsin, with Giuseppe Vafanculo from the District of Columbia and David Scorpio from the exotic land of Ecuador. We're here to bring you the news you need to know. Let me say, first of all, too, you need to know that the Senate confirmation hearings on Coney Barrett begin today, that Chuck Schumer and Kamala Harris are pushing demands that I do not expect are going to be fulfilled. Schumer, that she recused herself from the November 10th Supreme Court hearing on Obamacare and any future decision about the November 3rd election. Meanwhile, 56% of Americans say they're better off now under Trump than 4 years ago under Obama Biden. This is even under the circumstances of the coronavirus and the lockdown. Among the polls covered was this Zogby showing he has a 51% approval rating, an important metric. All incumbents with an approval rating of 50% or higher have won elections. Presidents with approval ratings lower than 50 have lost. This is all very, very positive for the president. The percent of Americans who say they're better off now than they were 4 years ago, for Trump, 56%, for Obama, 45%, for Obama earlier, I believe that would have been Clinton, 47%, and even earlier. He's doing fantastic. Not only is that a significant positive for Trump, if you look at the number of presidents in prior years, he's higher than the president who were incumbents in those prior years, 12 points higher than Reagan, who won a landslide in 84, 11 points higher than Obama in 2012. This ought to terrify the Democrats. Meanwhile, some have completely gone stark raving mad, including Keith Olbermann. To my utter astonishment, I used to regard him as the most rational mind on television. Here's what he said: terrorist Trump must be defeated, and his enablers and his supporters, and the Mike Lees and the William Barrs and the Kyle Rittenhouses and the Coney Barretts must be prosecuted and convicted and removed from our society. A comment? He's literally saying that all of us Trump supporters should be prosecuted and removed from society. This is not a joke. The communist revolution is here, and they want a blot. I'm fairly astonished by this, both the positive and the negative. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, we're living in two realities. It's bizarre. There's the Keith Olbermann lunatic reality where he has Trump Derangement Syndrome so bad that he's literally gone stark raving mad. And how can a man of his public stature make such a statement? It's just literally insane. And one of the only reasons I would like to see Trump win is because I would like to see all those special snowflakes melt down and curl up in fetal position and weep and pull their hair out and cut their face with razor blades and all the other insane stuff they'll do, because they're literally so entranced by the lies, the hypnotic lies of the Soros Bolshevik 2.0 color revolution. And again, getting back to the two worlds, you look at real polls where it looks like Trump and Biden have pulled even, maybe Trump's a little ahead. And then I got this email. I'm on several of the Washington Post's email lists just to see what lies they're spewing. And they sent one out, an news alert Sunday afternoon. Biden leads Trump by 12 points in latest Washington Post ABC News poll, which is such a slanted poll that they only interview people who are either neutral or rabidly in favor of Biden. They slant their poll results just like they did 4 years ago with Hillary Clinton. It's just, we live in two realities. We live in somewhat of a real world, and those lunatics live in Trump Derangement Syndrome land. It's sad.
Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, it is bizarre. It does seem like Trump Derangement Syndrome is contagious and possibly more dangerous than COVID. We're seeing a lot of people really lose their minds. And on the more serious side, yes, this is a Bolshevik communist revolution, and they want blood. There's no question about that. I find it very strange, too, that Chuck Schumer is already concerned about Amy Coney Barrett recusing herself from any decision on the election, because I think their plan is, if things don't go their way, they're planning on counting votes and adding votes until they win, and they're going to need the Supreme Court's help to make that happen.
I think you're 100% correct, and that's why Schumer. Meanwhile, the president reiterates Christmas Afghan withdrawal deadline. I mean, my God, what could be more welcomed by the American people? Get this. I didn't vote for Trump in 2016, but I'd crawl over broken glass to vote for him now. I mean, this is just amazing. Even though I'd voted for every Republican presidential candidate since 1980, I didn't vote for Donald Trump in 2016. Many Republican nominees had been huge disappointments to me, and I wasn't going to vote for another I thought would betray my trust. I couldn't imagine Trump as a genuine conservative who would champion limited government, respect individual freedom and liberty, and protect the unborn. But was I ever wrong? Even though I didn't vote for Trump in 2016, I'd crawl over broken glass to vote for him in 2020. In 2016, I was convinced Trump was just another New York liberal. On election night, I smiled. I was happy that at least Hillary Clinton wouldn't be president. I suspected the next 4 years with Trump would at least be entertaining. The primary reason I didn't vote for Trump was I didn't believe him. I didn't trust he'd be pro-life, a non-negotiable issue for me. His bluster and bravado didn't appeal to me. I took him literally, but not seriously, in contrast to his supporters who took him seriously, but not literally. By the time Trump took office, I was willing to give him a chance. He was a president, after all, deserved the opportunity. He was impressed by his accomplishments, building the strongest U.S. economy in my lifetime through historic business and personal tax cuts, resulting in millions of jobs created and record low unemployment, cutting federal government regulations that had stranglehold on American business, innovators, and entrepreneurs, confronting China's trade abuses, negotiating fair trade deals with Canada, Mexico, South Korea, and Japan, eliminating the Obamacare individual mandate, rebuilding our military through investments in our defense capabilities, as well as securing the largest military pay raise in a decade, nominating and confirming more solid conservative circuit court judges than any other first-term administration, nominating and fighting for the confirmation of two originalists, Justice Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, to the Supreme Court, and then nominating Amy Coney Barrett to fill the vacancy left by the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, moving the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem, and then brokering the Abraham Accords, peace deal between Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain, consistently fighting Democrats to build the wall and secure our southern border, reinforcing and repairing hundreds of miles with more construction on the way, This is just a brief summary. He's been the most pro-life president in U.S. history, promoted a culture of life and domestic policies supporting pro-life pregnancy centers, creating the Conscience and Religious Freedom Division, supporting health workers' conscience rights, working to defund Planned Parenthood. Trump has upheld the same objectives in his foreign policy, and such as through the Global Health Assistance Policy and ending funding for the pro-abortion UN Population Fund. Trump administration's accomplishments have been in spite of relentless daily attacks by the mainstream media, which acts as a Pravda-like arm of the Democratic Party. Trump Derangement Syndrome is evident every day on television and online. Then the details about Spygate were revealed in 2018. I became a full-throated proponent of Trump. And since the Obama administration colluded with Hillary, the DNC, and legacy media to weaponize federal intel agencies and law enforcement against an opposition candidate and then a sitting president. When the Russian collusion hoax didn't work, Trump's enemies tried to take him down with fake impeachment charges over a legitimate phone call with a new Ukrainian administration. As a president, Trump has largely kept his promises, fought against relentless opposition. I don't care about the tone of his tweets, nor if opponents think he's rude. I've seen he's a patriot who genuinely loves the United States of America and its people. I misjudged Trump in 2016, but I will do everything I can to see us reelected in 2020, and I'm sure I am not the only one. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Jim, what most of the Hollywood liberals and special snowflake types don't realize is this simple bit of knowledge. George Soros publicly stated for decades he wants to destroy the United States. George Soros' little 4'11" son, Shlomo Soros, picked Kamala Harris as the VP candidate. Joe Biden is not going to make it through his term. So the handpicked candidate who will become the president of the United States is a radical color revolutionist who wants to see the United States destroyed. Do you want that, or do you want a guy who may lean a little bit corporatist, a little bit, oh my God, fascist? But you know, those weak-minded shitheads don't even understand the word fascist means a cooperation between corporations and government, which, as opposed to an anarchistic communist destruction of society, I think I'd rather have a little bit of fascism. And so Trump derangement syndrome is everywhere. And sadly, he's the only candidate. He must win for our sovereign nation.
I really see Trump more as a nationalist who wants to build American strength and American business in the United States than a fascist myself. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, I think you're hitting on an important point. We have to ask ourselves, why is the entire establishment, political establishment, against Trump? Well, I think the reason is that Trump is a nationalist, and nationalism threatens everything that they've worked for to build this new world order and to build globalism. And so Trump, by espousing nationalism, he's sent a new wave of thinking into people's minds. And the establishment sees that as very, very dangerous. And that's why Trump is hated and loathed so much. And these people in the establishment think that we're going to follow along with them, even though they're the ones that have sent us down the road of destroying the middle class, destroying jobs, destroying freedom, and destroying free speech. That's why they're so always angry about Trump's awful tweets. Ooh, his tweets. So I think that's the root cause of all this is nationalism.
I think you're right. And by the way, I think it's well illustrated by Schumer's concern she not be involved in any of the issues arising out of the election. How could he preclude that? That's the best reason to have her on the court, that it's not deadlock 4-4. Meanwhile, it's no secret the squad unveils its agenda to push Biden further left after he's elected. We knew it was coming. Their plan calls for free universal health care, free universal child care, millions of green jobs, a cancellation of all student debt, a $15 minimum wage, the defunding of police departments across the country. That last in particular being completely lunatic. This echoes what AOC said last month, predicting it would be likely the left would push Biden further to the fringe reelected. I think overall we can push Vice President Biden in a more progressive direction across policy issues. In fact, that appears to be the reason why. Meanwhile, Democrat Joe, voters don't deserve to know if I'm going to pack the Supreme Court. Sir, I've got to ask you about packing the court. I know you said yesterday you weren't going to answer the question until after the election, but this is the number one thing I've been asked about by viewers in the past couple of days. Well, you've been asked by the viewers who are probably Republicans who don't want me to continue to talk about what they're doing with the court right now. Biden said, well, sir, don't the voters deserve to know? Biden, no, they don't. How outrageous. The election has already begun, and he's keeping it a secret. Meanwhile, the guy they're running out is not Joe Biden. It's the same guy that they had at the debate. They made him permanent. I'm very curious. You can see here, no earlobes. Look at this squint. That's in part to conceal the fact that his eyes are now brown. They're no longer blue. The leader of the Communist Party US just endorsed Biden. What does that tell you? Bob Akavian, leader of the Revolutionary Communist Party USA, asked voters to deliver a decisive defeat to Trump and the whole fascist regime. Meanwhile, here you can see the difference in the eyes. They're going whole hog. I wonder how Jill feels about that. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, a couple of the points of the squad have merit. For example, a cancellation of student debt and an improvement of the minimum wage would give the working class it's still far short of a living wage in most major cities, but those are points of some merit. But then they go insane and say defund police departments, which just shows they're just part of the color revolution that wants to have a communist society, which is just not going to happen in this country anytime soon. And as far as the Biden finally comes out and says, I won't answer that, voters don't need to know. What an arrogant 47-year career politician, a lying, talk out of both sides of your mouth, empty suit, who's gotten rich off of serving the globalists and being a fine swimmer in the deep swamp. So this guy, he doesn't give a rat's ass about the voters, and he just said so. How can anybody want this guy as president of the United States?
I think it's increasingly clear no one does. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Operator Air. Yeah, it is increasingly clear that nobody wants Biden. And, the fact that they can run a doppelganger or a second person, it shows the hubris that these people have and the complete lack of respect they have for the American people. And, Jim, that close-up of the eyes that you just showed is really, really telling. There's no way that's the same guy. And I noticed, too, if you look at the chin, which is something that doesn't change with age. And as far as the squad goes, the idea that we're going to defund the police, that can only lead to either a nationalized police force or UN troops guarding the streets of America. That won't end well. And it's a totally phony position, because they're making it sound like, oh, we're going to give you more freedom. But no, it'll be the opposite. We're going to have a nationalized, militarized police force, or the UN fill the vacuum, one of the two.
You got a great point, because you cannot have a civil society without law enforcement. I mean, the idea of defunding the police is completely lunatic. There are the eyes. Check them out. Meanwhile, we'll be right back. Here, nice joke. I thought a mandate was when Barack and Michelle go to a movie. And there's a new photograph that's gone viral on the internet that confirms what we've been reporting. This may be the single best photograph that shows that we have been played. Again, another form of insult to the American people. Disgusting. We now return. This is just a stunning article that ought to disturb every person in the whole world. Brain damage from masks cannot be reversed. COVID-19 masks are a crime against humanity and child abuse. Dr. Maria Agris-Brisson, MD, PhD, is a consultant neurologist and neurophysiologist with a PhD in pharmacology, special interests in neurotoxicology, environmental medicine, neuroregenerative, and neuroplasticity. This is what she has to say about masks and their effects on our brain. The rebreathing of our exhaled air will without a doubt create oxygen deficiency and a flooding of carbon dioxide. We know the human brain is very sensitive to oxygen deprivation. There are nerve cells, for example, in the hippocampus that can't be longer than 3 minutes without oxygen. They cannot survive. The acute warning symptoms are headaches, drowsiness, dizziness, issues in concentration, slowing down of reaction time, reactions of the cognitive system. We know that neurodegenerative diseases take years to decades to develop. Today, if you forget your phone number, the breakdown in your brain would have already started 20 or 30 years ago. While you're thinking you got used to wearing your mask and rebreathing your own exhaled air, the degenerative processes in your brain are getting amplified as your oxygen deprivation continues. Another problem is nerve cells in your brain are unable to divide themselves normally. So in our case, governments will generously allow us to get rid of the mask and go back to breathing oxygen freely. The lost nerve cells will no longer be regenerated. What is gone is gone. I do not wear a mask. I need my brain to think. I want to have a clear head when I deal with my patients, not be in a carbon dioxide-induced anesthesia. For children and adolescents, masks are an absolute no-no. Children and adolescents have an extremely active and adaptive immune system, and they need a constant interaction with the microbiome of the earth. Their brain is also incredibly active as it has so much to learn. The child's brain or the youth's brain is thirsting for oxygen. The more metabolically active the organism, the more oxygen it requires. In children and adolescents, every organ is metabolically active. To deprive a child or an adolescent's brain for oxygen or to restrict it in any way is not only dangerous to their health, it is absolutely criminal. Oxygen deficiency inhibits the development of the brain, and the damage that has taken place as a result cannot be reversed. The absolute medical contraindication means that this drug, this therapy, this method or measure should not be used, should not be allowed to use. To coerce an entire population to use an absolute medical contraindication by force, there must be definite and serious reasons for this, and the reasons must be presented to competent interdisciplinary and independent bodies to be verified and authorized. When in 10 years, dementia is going to increase exponentially, and the younger generations couldn't reach their God-given potential, it won't help to say we didn't need the mask or we didn't know. Where are our health departments, our health insurance, our medical association? It would have been their duty to vehemently oppose the lockdown, stop it from the very beginning. Why do the medical boards give punishment to doctors who give people exemptions? Does a person or doctor seriously have to prove oxygen deprivation hurts people? What kind of medicine are our doctors and medical associations represented? Who is responsible for this crime? The ones who want to enforce it, the ones who let it happen and play along, or the ones who don't prevent it? It's not about masks. It's not about viruses. It's certainly not about your health. It's about much more. I am not anticipating. I am not afraid. You can notice they are already taking our air to breathe. We are responsible for what we think, not the media. We are responsible for what we do, not our superior. We are responsible for our health, not the World Health Organization, and we are responsible for what happens in our country, not the government. Stunning. This should be on the front page of every newspaper, every television, every radio program. We're not going to hear a word from the mainstream media. Giuseppe.
Well, Jim, the globalist trident, the three-pronged trident to destroy the United States, one of the prongs is this scamdemic. They release a bioweapon, but in reality, a lot of it is just fear. That's the greater disease. And then the malevolent forced mask wearing masks is terrible for you. I've never worn a mask. The second trident goes back to the government, the traitorous Democrats and the color revolution. The third trident of the globalists trying to destroy the sovereign nation is the Zionist wing, with stealing hundreds of trillions of dollars of real wealth from Americans and creating such an overwhelming debt in the derivatives option market, which is now 1.4 quadrillion, which is which is a million trillion, which is just absurd, that amount of money. Those three things are being used against this country to essentially create, like the great Frederick C. Blackburn said on our show Saturday, to create a Soviet-like global state where we are all going to be balkanized. We're going to be like a Soviet satellite to Jerusalem. And if people don't wake up now, rip off those masks, and realize these globalists, the international Jews, are trying to destroy the sovereign countries of Europe and United States and Canada. If people don't wake up, they're going to end up living like a Soviet satellite state of the 60s.
I'm increasingly concerned that they have devised a devilish scheme for us to kill ourselves, and that this may be the explanation for the Deagle website projection of going from about 330 million today to fewer than 100 million in 2025, just a few years hence. Scorpio, your thoughts?
That's an interesting point, Dr. Fetzer, about killing ourselves. Very interesting. And, Giuseppe made a really good point about the fear is actually worse than the so-called disease that they've spread around. And, fear is the hallmark of all of the agendas that these controllers pull on us. Fear is the essential element that's in every single agenda that they pull on us. So we should always be aware of that. And, that picture of Michelle Obama, that was something else. Wow. And just imagine the control they had over Barack Obama, knowing that he was married to a transgender woman. They had that guy on a string. They could make him do whatever they wanted. And we went 8 years without a single criticism of the man from the mainstream media. And compare that with what we face now. Trump could drink a glass of water and they'd criticize him for wasting precious natural resources, right? And about the masks are, it is absolutely suicide. You're right. And, there's a lot of people now that are being forced to work 8 hours a day with a mask on. For example, in Las Vegas, I have a buddy that lives in Las Vegas. All of the casino workers have to wear a mask all day long, or they face immediate termination. If they take their mask off, they're fired.
Yeah, it's absolutely shocking. As a physician who looked after Michelle on a campaign trail and walked into her taking a leak standing up in a trailer near Trenton, observed, Michelle Obama is not a man who underwent a sex transformation. Michelle Obama is a man with breast implants and a huge shaving bill. It's stunning.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of 5 o'clock shadow on her.
Here's a fascinating development I had to include. The editor of the New York Times resigns over bias and censorship issues. Bari Weiss, who served as editor of the New York Times for the past 3 years, has publicly announced her resignation, citing the paper's betrayal of the ideal stated by Times owner Adolph Oakes to make the columns of the New York Times a forum for the consideration of all questions of public importance, and toward that end to invite intelligent discussion from all shades of opinion. Here's a brief excerpt from her letter. A new consensus has emerged in the press, perhaps especially at this paper, that truth isn't a process of collective discovery, but an orthodoxy already known to enlightened few whose job is to inform everyone else. Twitter is not on the masthead of the New York Times, but Twitter has become its ultimate editor, as the ethics and mores of that platform have become those of the paper. The paper itself has increasingly become a kind of performance space. Stories are chosen and told in a way to satisfy the narrowest of audiences, rather than to allow the curious public to read about the world and then draw their own conclusions. I was always taught that journalist was charged with writing the first rough draft of history. Now, history itself is one more ephemeral thing molded to fit the needs of a predetermined narrative. Here's the whole letter. This is absolutely stunning. I joined the paper with gratitude and optimism 3 years ago. I was hired with a goal of bringing in voices that would not otherwise appear in your pages. First-time writers, centrists, conservatives, and others who would not naturally think of the Times as their home. The reason for this effort was clear. The paper's failure to anticipate the outcome of the 2016 election meant that it didn't have a firm grasp of the country it covers. Dean Bacot and others have admitted as much on various occasions. The priority and opinion was to help redress that critical shortcomings. But the lessons that have followed the election, lessons about the importance of understanding other Americans, the necessity of resisting tribalism, the centrality of the free exchange of ideas to a democratic society have not been learned. Instead, a new consensus has emerged from the press, but perhaps especially at this paper, that truth isn't a process of collective discovery, but an orthodoxy already known to the enlightened few whose job is to inform everyone else. My own forays into wrongthink have made me the subject of constant bullying by colleagues who disagree with my views. They have called me a Nazi and a racist. I have learned to brush off comments about how I'm writing about the Jews again. Several colleagues perceived to be friendly with me were badgered by co-workers. My work and my character are openly demeaned on company-wide Slack channels where masthead editors regularly work in. There are some co-workers I insist I need to be rooted out of the company if it's to be a truly inclusive one, while others post X and Y's next to my name. Still other New York Times employees publicly smear me as a liar and bigot on Twitter with no fear that harassing me will be met with appropriate action. They never are. These are all terms, there are terms for all of this. Unlawful discrimination, hostile work environment, constructive discharge. I'm no legal expert, but I know that this is wrong. Part of me wishes I could say my experience is unique, but the truth is intellectual curiosity, let alone risk-taking, is now a liability at the Times. Why edit something challenging to our readers or write something bold only to go through the numbing process of making it ideologically kosher when we can assure ourselves of job security and clicks by pushing our 4,000th op-ed, arguing that Donald Trump is a unique danger to the country and the world. And so self-censorship has become the norm. Our op-eds that would have easily been published 2 years ago would now get an editor-writer in serious trouble, if not fired. If a piece is perceived as likely to inspire backlash internally or on social media, the editor or writer avoids pitching it. If she feels strongly enough to suggest it, she quickly steers to safer ground. And if every now and then she succeeds in getting a piece published that does not explicitly promote progressive causes, it happens only after every line is carefully massaged, negotiated, and caveated. The paper of record, that's the New York Times, which is supposed to reflect the history of the United States, is more and more the record of those living in a distant galaxy, one whose concerns are profoundly removed from the lives of most people. This is a galaxy in which, to choose just a few recent examples, the Soviet space program is lauded for its diversity. The doxing of teenagers in the name of justice is condoned. And the worst caste systems in human history includes the United States alongside Nazi Germany. Even now, I'm confident most people at the Times do not hold these views, yet they are cowed by those who do. Why? Perhaps they believe the ultimate goal is righteousness. Perhaps they believe they'll be granted protection if they nod along with a coin of our realm language, degraded in service to an ever-shifting laundry list of right causes. All this bodes ill, especially for independent-minded young writers and editors, paying close attention to what they'll have to do to advance their career. Rule 1, speak your mind at your own peril. Rule 2, never risk commissioning a story that goes against the narrative. Rule 3, never believe an editor or publisher who urges you to go against the grain. Eventually, the publisher will cave to the mob, the editor will get fired or reassigned, and you'll be hung out to dry. None of this means that some of the most talented journalists in the world don't still labor for this newspaper. They do, which is what makes the illiberal environment especially heartbreaking. I will be, as ever, a dedicated reader of their work, but I can no longer do the work that you brought me here to do, the work that Adolf Oakes described in that famous 1896 paper statement, to make of the columns of the New York Times a forum for the consideration of all questions of public importance, and to that end, to invite the intelligent discussion from all shades of opinion. Oakes' idea is one of the best I've encountered, and I've always comforted myself with the notion that the best ideas win out, but ideas cannot win on their own. They need a voice, they need a hearing. Above all, they must be backed by people willing to live by them. Remarkable, the New York Times, which has been viewed as the liberal left mouthpiece, should have an editor with the integrity to resign. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Oh man, I don't know how Bari Weiss endured the Holocaust, and now another show. The New York Times, is unreadable. It's such a communist, globalist rag now, with such an agenda that serves the two slices of the kosher sandwich, the Zionist capitalist and the communist Bolshevik, that I don't know what to make of it. I mean, I've read her pieces retweeted, and she doesn't sound like a conservative to me. She doesn't sound like bringing fresh voices. She read like the typical traitorous dual citizen New York Times writer. So I don't know. It seems like I'm a lot of crocodile tears, and maybe positioning herself. I don't know. I don't believe her, honestly. So
I have a panel of 100 executives of the New York Times, every one of whom is a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen. Scorpio,
exactly.
Your thoughts?
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know that about all the dual citizens. That's incredible. Not surprising, but startling. And as far as anyone that's willing to resign their position from something like that, you have to wonder what their motivation is. And I hope that some people of conscience are saying, I can't go along with this uniculture, uni-thought kind of society they're trying to create, and hopefully more people will start to resist it. As Stalin called them useful idiots. I don't think that most of them understand the kind of society they're actually working towards creating. And if you really get down to it, it's going to be based on the Chinese system. That's what's coming. That's a lot of them don't know that, but that's what they're trying to do. That's why we never see any criticism of China in the mainstream media, ever. Only Russia. Putin's the dictator, but you never hear the president of China called a dictator, even though they don't even bother to have elections in China. It's incredible.
Scorpio, you're 100% right. It's not a Soviet model. It's a Chinese model, including the social merit system. And if they have all digital financing, they can cut you off anytime you cross a line. You won't even be able to feed yourself or your family. Just disgraceful. Meanwhile, critical swing voters in battleground state reveal why Kamala Harris helps Trump's re-election chances. Biden's not going to make it in 4 years. The first Black female voice they thought would boost Biden's standing, but selecting Harris, a progressive Democrat, may actually have harmed Biden's standing among swing voters. Following last week's vice presidential debate between Harris and Pence, Axios conducted a focus group with Michigan voters who supported Barack Obama in 2012, but Donald Trump in 2016. The majority said they'd support Trump in this year's election because they believe Harris would eventually become president if Biden is elected. Biden's not going to make it 4 years, so Kamala Harris is going to be president, and I have zero trust she can be president, so I'm just picking the lesser of two evils at this point. Everyone else in the group agreed. Other swing voters told Axios they felt scared over Harris's debate performance because she may help Biden win the election. I'm fearful of this woman because she knows how to strike chords with the people of America. She's basically utilizing everything that's happened this year to attack the Trump campaign. And she does it in such a way she's making really strong points, but I don't think they're true. So she's coming across very powerfully. Just 2 voters in the group of 13 will be voting for Biden. The other 11 will be sticking with Trump. Meanwhile, holy hell, Joe Biden looks like death in Erie, Pennsylvania. Something is wrong with old Joe. On Saturday, Joe Biden held a rally with 12 to 20 people in Erie, Pennsylvania, and he looked like death warm over. Joe Biden, and again, this is the double. Notice no earlobes, brown eyes, not blue. Former Vice President Biden appears to be putting himself on the other side of the left-wing protesters. He desperately needs to support him. He's now saying we need more police, more funding for police, contradicting Black Lives Matter. This is going to create chaos. It's going to divide the Democrats. Meanwhile, Biden and Harris hold a campaign event in Arizona, and the local news can't believe that not one supporter showed up. CLG News adds, tell me again about the polls that show Trump losing by 16 points to Biden. He can't even get 16 people to show at his rallies. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Yeah, man, it's the mainstream media is a fantasy. I mean, I mentioned earlier in the show how the Washington Post, ABC News latest poll had Biden up by 12. That came out Sunday, and the reality is much like Hillary Clinton in 2016, where they had the polls and she thought she was going to be the queen coronated, and look what happened. She lost. I mean, I think we're on the verge of a Trump landslide. Can you believe Biden, who is flip-flopping insanely now, going to fund the police? Because they know that you can't tell the great silent majority who wants a stable society, who respects the police department, to suddenly defund and open up the barn gates so that every rob, burn, loot, and murder animal can come out and have their way in a degraded anarchistic society. It just can't happen. And these lunatics who are serving the vile traitor George Soros, they don't get it, but now they're starting to get it. They're going to lose badly, and there's nothing they can do at this point. There's no way Biden can win with this kind of bizarre flip-flopping.
Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, I agree, Giuseppe. The Democrats' only path to victory is cheating. They're going to have to do a whole lot of cheating. So they're going to have to vote early and vote often. As far as the police go, you know, defunding it obviously is a very bad idea. But how about we demilitarize the police, start training the police not to look at the general population as their enemy, no more training in Israel, and let's get back to community policing where the local beat cop lives in the neighborhood that he polices. That would make such a huge difference. And as far as the Biden rally, that was just absolutely pathetic. Those photographs you showed were unbelievable. You got 15 people in their little circle like a slave. It's almost like an animal in a cage. It's sad that that's the vision of humanity that they want to paint for us. And I thought it was just pathetic how, if you notice when Joe was speaking, there was this pile of copper piping behind him to make it look like he supports the working man and the working class. And it was just a pathetic prop to make it look like he supports working people when he doesn't. And just imagine if Kamala Harris does become president, you won't be able to criticize a single thing she does, because you will be both a racist and a misogynist.
Nice points. And, you know, the media is aware that no one is turning out for Biden and Harris, and yet they continue to perpetrate the illusion that they're actually in the lead. Ridiculous. Meanwhile, we want to hear from you. Send fan mail to live.needtoknow@gmail.com. live.needtoknow@gmail.com. Holly Beth commented, watching from an Asian country, can say that I do appreciate seeing Dr. Fetzer This is way much better. Thank you, Giuseppe, for pointing out the Zionist connection. So refreshing to hear that. Meanwhile, further fan mail. I thought it was good news the WHO backflipped on the lockdown policy. Maybe it just means they're close to finishing the 5G rollout. I thought of you as my friend was describing the massive number of bill and hydro trucks back and forth out of their central nest at the height of the COVID horseshit. He talked to a tech and the rollout was taking place. 50 massive hydro trucks a day, 60% going north, 40 south, and the Beltec said they had about 60,000 towers in by January 2021. The idea of being the COVID continuance will just be used as a cover story to divert attention from these installations and growing deaths for the elderly for now due to the militarization of 5G, and then like magic, another pandemic to cover the new age range of affected. This fits in with your observations and is supremely diabolical. My friend works adjacent to a nest of activity, has no doubt as to the method of distraction in the end game, but have a nice day. Meanwhile, final thoughts. We have a legal fundraiser that's going to take place on Tuesday, and I have a special event on the Fetzer Presents about Paul McCartney. Did he die and was he replaced on Thursday? Meanwhile, Giuseppe, your final thoughts.
Jim, that viewer is really on to something that's being ignored by most people because they don't understand the threat, and that's the 5G rollout. You know how people are warned, if you're going to cook food in a microwave, don't get too close to it and make sure it doesn't leak. That radiation is bad for you. Well, guess what? Every one of the 5G towers are essentially broadcast microwaves. It's the same frequency, and it's really deadly for you. And because the range is so, the output is so powerful that it doesn't go very far because of the short frequency. So there's towers everywhere. It is going to be a massive attack on the decent health of Americans and everywhere else in the world where they're putting it up. Some people have argued that the first rollout was in Wuhan, China, where the so-called Wu flu could have actually been the massive rollout of 5G. 5G is going to be a major problem.
Scorpio, your thoughts?
Yeah, Giuseppe, very good points about 5G, and it's like, isn't the internet fast enough already? I mean, do we need to be able to upload a movie in 0.3 seconds? Is that really going to help anyone's life? Is it really going to help anyone's life to have your toaster hooked up to the internet? Is that going to increase our quality of life? I don't think so. We are kind of looking at a human barbecue at wave frequency. And we have to ask ourselves, if we're in the middle of this horrible pandemic, why was 5G being secretly rolled out in the midst of this, deadly pandemic that we're all living through? We have to ask ourselves those questions.
I think that's exactly right, that the pandemic is used as a cover for the 5G. It's obviously even a greater threat than the face masks in fulfilling the legal projection of decimating 2/3 of the US population by 2025. Look at this, my friends. We're talking about less than 5 years from now, 2/3 of your fellow citizens by this projection will be dead. That's something you ought to be thinking about. This is Jim Fetzer in Madison, thanking Giuseppe Vafanculo from the District of Columbia, Dave Scorpio from Ecuador for their excellent commentary. We'll be back tomorrow with a later report from the front of the news you need to know. Thanks for watching. See you then.
Well, Scorpio, quite the show. The good professor was on fire, as we had mentioned in the introduction, and his coverage of the absolute horrific decimation of masks and wearing them regularly, especially on these children, I thought was dead on. No pun intended.
Yeah, Absolutely. And, it's interesting to point out, too, that this brain damage that's caused by mask wearing is permanent. And not to mention the psychological damage that's being inflicted upon, young people and young children. It's stunning. And I thought that was a great point.
Yeah, it really was. And what's interesting is when I was scrolling through, as my wife describes it, doom scrolling through Twitter earlier, I came across something called the Great Barrington Declaration. Have you heard of it?
No.
Well, it turns out that the Great Barrington Declaration, as in fact, I'm at the website, which is gbdeclaration.org. The Great Barrington Declaration, as infectious disease epidemiologists and public health scientists, we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health impacts of the prevailing COVID-19 policies and recommend an approach we call focused protection, which is, take off the masks, put people in quarantine who are actually sick, go back to living life. And they put this out last week, and they got 100,000 signatures, and they were like really happy with it. Guess what? Now it's up to 560,000 health professionals have signed this now. They're coming out of the woodwork, and good for them.
All right, they're coming out of the woodwork. I like that.
Indeed, they are. Yeah, and the other thing that that's so nutty is this whole globalist treachery via the despicable satanic subhuman Jorgi Schwartz, the vile Jew who sold out his fellow Jews to the Nazis in World War II to survive. And what a better world this would have been had he just been killed. I mean, what a lowlife. And now he changed his name to something that sounds sophisticated, George Soros. But he's the most unsophisticated lowlife. He's a parasite that's figured out how to join with the other globalist banking parasites and to amass billions upon billions of dollars in fiat currency. And then they use the technique of shorting against a country's currency. I mean, he attacked the UK to get them to join the European Union, 20 years ago, whenever that happened, 30 years ago, whenever it was. And just like Paul Singer, the closeted homosexual bankster who attacked Brazil and forced them, it's like these subhuman parasites should not have that power. And I don't understand why they do.
Well, yeah, and Soros crashed several countries' currency over the years and made billions of dollars doing so while he drove ordinary people into poverty.
Yep.
It's really an incredible story.
Yes, utterly disgusting. And so any other thoughts on that show? I thought you made some excellent points, man, pointing out that Trump was backed by the silent majority of the nationalists, and the globalist parasites just absolutely can't have that because they've hypnotized, as Mike Gaddy, the brilliant Mike Gaddy, the rebel man describes, they've hypnotized Boobus Americanus into believing they have the power that they really don't have. And Boobus Americanus says, oh, we want to be part of the color revolution. Oh, Black Lives Matter. We feel so bad. And it's just so ridiculously stupid. And yet the globalists fear nationalism like nothing else, because if enough people wake up, there aren't that many of those globalist parasites, and they should literally be hunted down like the movie Purge and all taken off the planet. They're literally satanic and they're that evil. And I'd like to see it happen, frankly.
Well, we got to see him perp walked into the town square and put on a robe. That's right.
That'd be really good. Really good.
Yeah. And, the striking visual from the show for me was that picture of Michelle Obama. And,
oh my God.
And Bari Weiss, Barack Obama together. And just imagine the power they had over that man with the blackmail to expose him for being married to essentially a transvestite on hormones. It's incredible. And the other visual that really struck me was that close up of Joe Biden's eyes. That is not the same person. No way.
That is trippy. I was skeptical about the body double until the ear, chin, and especially the eyes. You can't fake eye color. I mean, you can, but Biden wouldn't. So, and
well, yeah, and you don't develop a cleft chin later in life. Either you have one or you don't.
Yeah, man, that's exactly it. And thank you, Ryan J, for posting during the show. We welcome all comments, any comments, even if you disagree with us. We're big boys and girls, and we can discuss rationally. We don't have to immediately start screaming at you like the TV people do, the mainstream TV people. And so,
yeah, Ryan J, thank you for that comment. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ryan and everybody who's watching, tomorrow we're going to do something a little different. Jim Fetzer is like the godfather, this generation's godfather of the truth industry, the truth effort initiative. I mean, you go back, the original one was Ezra Pound, and then Ezra Pound groomed Eustace Mullins, and then Eustace Mullins inadvertently groomed G. Edward Griffith, and Jim Fetzer kind of grew on his own, a totally different individual who was Yale trained and was a professor teaching logic, studying artificial intelligence 30 years ago. He's written like 30 books on it. The guy's such a big brain. And what's amazing is he is still sharp as a tack, and he's about to turn 80. So he exposed the utter lies of Sandy Hook. I don't know what happened at Sandy Hook. Scorpio, I don't think anybody does unless they were there. And those people are not coming out and talking. But what I do know is by the investigation of many talented, sophisticated investigators, they've proved that the official story is a bunch of bullshit. It didn't happen the way they're talking about. And to me, the slam dunk is Jim does a show I think they're on hiatus right now because of the COVID stuff. It used to be Gary King, the real sharp guy down in New Orleans, Jim Fetzer, and Larry Rivera. And they used to had some other people on for a while, but that trio has been there forever. And Larry Rivera is a computer guy, technical guy, and he's become experienced in the sophisticated graphics software that you can do a phenomenon called photogravimetrics. And what that means is you can take all the mathematical aspects of a photo and measure them exactly, and then you can overlay a picture of a young person on the same person old, and it will match up because you don't change that much. For example, if we had 5-year-old Scorpio overlaid on Scorpio today, it would fit exactly. But if you took 5-year-old Scorpio and overlaid it on me, it would blur and distort and it wouldn't line up. So Jim gave Larry Rivera. Larry used that technique to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt Lee Harvey Oswald was in the doorway watching Kennedy go by and couldn't possibly shot him. The face of Lee Harvey Oswald lines up exactly in the famous AP photographer Ike Algen, the Algen 9 photo. It's funny, that photo also shows there's a bullet hole through the front of the windshield. So that photo is amazing. And with digital expansion now, you can scan that photo and you can blow it up and not lose much resolution. And that's what Larry Rivera did. Took pictures of Lee Harvey Oswald, dropped it into the guy who's going like this in the doorway, who they claim was another individual, and it's Lee Harvey Oswald. It fits exactly. And then they took a picture of the guy they claim it was, and they drop it over, and it's all blurry and distorted. Another perfect example is when a young Marilyn Monroe is dropped onto a mature Marilyn Monroe. It fits exactly. But when you take a young Marilyn Monroe and put it on Jane Mansfield, who tried to look just like Marilyn Monroe with bigger breasts back in the day, it's all distorted. So here's checkmate as far as the Sandy Hook lie.
Supposedly distorted the breasts or her face?
Face. That's a good line. The Lenny Posner's son Noah supposedly died in that false flag, right? So Jim gave Larry Rivera the picture of 5-year-old or however old they were, I don't even know, 7-year-old Noah Posner, and a picture of college student that's on the internet named Michael Vabner, right? So he gave it to Larry. Hey, can you do that thing you do? And so Larry created, if I would have thought this out, I have that in a GIF form. We'll play it tomorrow during the fundraiser, but I have the GIF that shows it. And so Larry dropped the little boy Noah Posner on top of the college student Michael Vabner. They're exactly the same. It's the same person. So Jim has identified that Lenny Posner is Michael Vabner. Is Reuben Vabner, and his son Noah Posner is in reality didn't exist, and it's still alive. The college student, probably now, that was years ago, out of college doing whatever, named Michael Vabner. And so for that, the mighty, mighty power of the globalist parasites, the international Jew, came after Jim Fetzer because they had proven him wrong. And there's one thing that the deep state doesn't like getting any false flag proven, but when the internationalist Jew is proven to be caught in a lie, they really hate it. So they went after him and sued him. And Jim was, he's so bright, but sadly so naive. He should have just settled and never gone to court, like Dave Gahary did. Dave Gahary was smart and said, I apologize, and we'll I'll eat a little crow. And we lost Scorpio, but I'll continue. Oh, here he goes. He's coming back. So I'll wait till he comes back. There you are. We lost you for a minute.
Getting too close to the truth there, Giuseppe. That's what happened.
A little close to the truth. So anyway, so they came after him, and Jim was so confident that he had the facts on his side, and he goes into a Wisconsin court. And I was born and raised in Wisconsin. It used to be a state with a progressive integrity, especially the courts were real clean. And this lowlife, I don't have their names memorized. This judge, who's since gotten a federal appointeeship, for being a good boy, is totally slammed the door after kicking Jim in the testicles, slammed the door on his head. And by what I mean by that, he wouldn't let Jim present any of his copious proof. And he said, but he let the attorneys for Reuben Vabner, Lenny Posner present everything that was actually lies. And so the jury, and then the judge, Jim, kept trying to make his points, and the judge silenced him because he was defending himself pro se. Kevin Barrett, the great Kevin Barrett, was there, and he wrote a scathing article that appeared on Veterans Today and other locations, Unz Review as well, documenting that this court case was as bad as any Stalin show trial. And so now Jim finally found for an appeal some good attorneys, and he's confident, but the sad fact is he's got a $1.4 million lien against him, and he's not a wealthy man. He's living on a retired professor's salary and Social Security. And so he's run up, close to $100,000 in legal fees, and he's paid with his savings a good chunk of it, but he still has, probably $40,000 and growing that he owes these people before this can finally get overturned. They release the lien, but you have to pay your lawyers. And so tomorrow night, instead of broadcasting the show live, the show will be on BitChute. The show will be on Brighton. If you want to go read it, we're going to have a 2-hour live fundraiser, and we hope that you can donate a little bit of money and join us. And then we'll edit down the people who join us to talk about Jim, and Jim's himself is going to join us a little later in the 2-hour show. So tomorrow night live for 2 hours, we're going to try and raise a little money for Jim Fetzer, the first of several of these initiatives, because he's got there's wealthy people who know the truth, so we just have to let them know. So if we can get average people like you and I giving Jim 10 or $20, and then the wealthy ones give him 500, 1,000, we can put a nice dent in his legal defense fund. And so thoughts on that, Scorpio?
Well, yeah, it was a show trial, and it was sort of a case of heads I win, tails you lose. So yeah, we got to help Jim out, because not only is it a personal thing, because Jim has put so much of himself on the line,
Right.
But his case and what happened to him is also symbolic on a larger level of what could happen to anyone that speaks the truth if we let this kind of crap stand.
Oh, good for you. That's so well said. Yes, this is we're, as we said earlier today when we interviewed the great David Icke, which will be coming to Revolution Radio starting Friday. That interview, we'll break it up into pieces. It's so much there. The guy was just on fire, amazing. But as you said in one of your questions to him, brilliant question, you said, in the Stephen King novel The Stand, it feels like this is what's going on, literally the final stand against good versus evil, and he completely agreed, and others get that. You and I see that, and so this would be a victory we need to deliver, and so we can get some semblance of real justice back in the judiciary. Right now it's Jew-J-E-W judiciary, because those parasites have packed the courts with their traitors, dual citizen types, and we need to clean house in a major way, and this would be a first step to get Fetzer the win in his appeal.
Yeah, clean house. I like that. It's about what it's going to come down to, man.
It is coming down to that. All right, man. Yeah. Great day today, especially finally we got you going on Zoom, and you're such an excellent part of the A team, the regular team, which is Jim Fetzer, me, Giuseppe, and David Scorpio in Ecuador, soon to be back in the States, and we won't have as many freezes and glitches that I have to edit out. But tomorrow we'll be back. Need to know the Fetzer report, but something special. We're going to do a 2-hour live with lots of guests popping in to talk about Jim. And, look at your budget. If you can skip a couple of Starbucks Ventes and skip a couple of Taco Bell treats and give Jim $20, $30 this month, or maybe more. Maybe you're doing well. Please join in tomorrow and donate. And with that, Scorpio, any final thoughts?
No, just that I really hope people can chip in and help out, man. This is a really serious thing that happened to Dr. Fetzer, and he's put a lot of things on the line. So let's all do what we can to help him. Absolutely.
Well said. Can't add anything to that. So until tomorrow, this is Giuseppe Vafanculo from the District of Criminals and David Scorpio from Ecuador signing off.